You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. On today's episode, a guy who threw a bunch of touchdown passes in the Southeastern Conference at Mississippi State, big-time high school player as well. But he's off and running on a post-football career that is all about fishing, bass boats, bass tournaments. He can catch them, and he's got the social media presence to prove it as well. He is Tyler Russell on today's episode of the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast.
This episode of the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast is brought to you by the Foundation for Mississippi Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks.
Thanks for listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm Matt Wyatt. You probably know Tyler Russell from his football career, and that's understandable because he had a heck of a football career. Tyler, welcome to the show. And so I think before we get into the outdoor, the football career is probably the place to start. And is that what people kind of remember you maybe for the most still to this day?
Yes. Matt, thanks for having me. Yes, football in general, just, coming out of Meridian High School and being a quarterback that wanted to play at Mississippi State and had a pretty good career at Mississippi State.
Yeah.
Most people know me from that.
From that. I think I asked you this a couple of years ago. We went fishing together. But the specific thing that people still talk to you about the most, was it a game against Tennessee in college or a touchdown, but it's a high school game, right? The thing that they talk about still the most?
Yes.
So what was that?
So I've played, many games in college and, actually got to go to Canada, played over there for a little bit. But the one game that people talk to me the most about is a high school state championship game here in Mississippi, and we played South Panola for the state championship. And it was an unbelievable game, atmosphere. And one thing they say is, man, that game was really, really cold when they bring it up. So.
It was one of the coldest games I was up there in a broadcast booth for that game. The year, help me, was it it was in 2010 or 2009?
2008, 2009, I graduated in 2009.
So it was the fall of 2008.
Right.
And that was South Panola's, they were at the, in the middle of, I guess towards the end of an incredible run of dominance, all those state championships. I remember the billing going into that game was, South Panola's got, the University of South Panola, the history. Meridian's got big stars like Tyler Russell. I remember that was sort of the billing of the game. It's so interesting to me that after all these years, that's what people remember.
It was a very big game. They had an 89 game winning streak. They hadn't lost in 5 years. So, it was a whole lot of pressure. But one thing people don't know, we actually played them in a jamboree game that before the season started.
Really? So
that was kind of confidence booster for us because we beat them 7-0 in the jamboree. Jamboree really means nothing, but it showed our guys and it showed me that we could play with them. So we were highly anticipated that, if we made it to state championship, we probably were going to have to play South Panola. So we were ready for them.
So you win that game. You were already a highly recruited football player and going to be, even if you hadn't won that game, but you win that game. I would think it sort of picked up steam a little bit after that, correct?
It did, but not in the way that you probably would think. So basically, I was committed to Sylvester Croom at Mississippi State since my junior year of high school. So I was done with my recruitment, and I was,
So you had committed the year before?
Yeah, I committed the year before, and I wanted to shut down all recruitment because I knew we had a really good chance of making it way and going to state championship. So I didn't want any distractions.
Yeah.
So I was glad to be able to do that. Right after the game against South Panola, we won state championship. The next day, I get a call from Coach Groom saying that he's resigned. So he said, look, I'm going to resign. Just kind of stay patient, talk to the AD. And at the time, I think it was Greg Byrne at the time.
That's right.
And he said, just see who they get, right? So after we won the state championship, my phone just was blowing up from different college coaches. And keep in mind, at that point in time, signing day was February the 3rd. It was always the first Wednesday in February.
Right. You didn't have the December signing period then.
You didn't have the December signing period. So, after we won the state championship, we had to go I played in Mississippi, Alabama All-Star game.
Okay.
And then while we were down there, you had people like Chad Bumpus, Fletcher Cox, people like that. And we all were talking about, hey, let's see who's going to be the coach. And while we were down there, that's when we got the word that Coach Mullen had accepted a job at Mississippi State.
Okay. What was your first communication with Dan Mullen like?
It was good, and it was bad too. Just being honest. He first called when we were down there, and he said, "Hey, look, I just got the job. I'm gonna come down there when y'all finish the game, and we're gonna come to your school." So he came to my school probably the week after, and talked to him. And at first, I was not high on Coach Mullen. Being honest, just some things that he said versus when he was at my school versus that night when we got to my house and he talked to my parents just didn't align with what, I was kind of disappointed because I felt like if he would have taken the time and looked at my character, there would have been some things we didn't have to talk about.
I see.
And so moving forward for a long time, and this is probably the first time I'm really sharing this, I was not going to go to Mississippi State.
Okay. See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was not going to go to Mississippi State. Actually, I had visited Alabama when they were getting ready to play Utah in Sugar Bowl so that we could practice. We went. Nobody knew we went. This is after we met with Coach Mullen. And we went over there. And a funny story I tell people is we're sitting there, we're talking to Coach Saban, and my mom and my dad are there. We're sitting there talking to him about, possibly coming to Alabama.
And this is in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, this was right after practice. They had just got done with practice for that week. So we went in his office, we were talking to him, and my mom starts talking. And she's like, we just want Tyler to be with a coach who can prepare him for life and, make him into a man that he needs to become. And my mom says, if Jamarcus Russell would have had that, he would have turned out better. And Nick Saban's like, well, I coached Marcus Russell when he was at LSU. So we always laugh about that and talk. And we're probably like, yeah, we're probably not going to go to Alabama now. But
thanks, Mom.
Yeah. So I kind of looked at that. But from the standpoint of recruiting and things like that, we looked at it, and it was between Mississippi State, Alabama, and South Carolina. Steve Spurrier called me one night, just out of blue. Hey, this old ball coach, Steve. I'm like, this can't be. It was like an 805 number, and I answered it. And it was him.
Wow.
But the offense coordinator that was at State that left, Coach McCorvey, he went to South Carolina. And then that's how we got hooked up, and he was telling Coach Spurrier about me. And for the longest time, I was getting phone calls every single day. After school, letters, calls. I wouldn't answer. I'll be honest, I didn't answer when Coach Mullen was calling because I just, didn't know. It was just something about that I just didn't feel right.
So the relationship initially just didn't click?
No, it didn't. And I'll be honest with that. And I ended up, my parents were able to talk to Tim Tebow's parents about Coach Mullen. They kind of eased some things a little bit. And he actually sent in the cavalry, and they sent Coach Les and
Les Kenning.
Okay. Greg Knox.
Coach Knox.
And then Coach Smith came, and, they just kind of say, hey, look, we want you,
Is that Melvin Smith?
Yes.
Okay.
Melvin Smith.
So those three right there now, Les Kenning, Greg Knox, and Melvin Smith could, as they say, could sell ice to an Eskimo. Those three.
And Coach Hughes.
Oh, and Tony Hughes. Yeah. Okay.
So they sent the cavalry to come kind of smooth things up.
Sure.
And in the long run, a lot of people don't know when I share my testimony at different churches and stuff, I share it. But my grandmother, my senior year, was diagnosed with cancer. So my mom didn't get to see me play, but like 3-4 games my senior year. And so she was up there in Tennessee, Nashville, taking care of my grandmother. And my grandmother, the last time that I ever got to talk to her, this one was when all this was happening. It was before state championship. She said, "I'm glad you're going to Mississippi State, and I'm glad you won the state championship." And this was before any of that took place. So something inside me was like, you know what? That's what my grandmother thought, and she wanted. So we decided to go to Mississippi State. So that was the real reason why we went.
What a story. I don't think I've ever heard that story. You may not have ever shared parts of that before. And of course, it's been a long time now, Tyler. Statute of limitations on some of it. and then you wind up at Mississippi State, obviously, and you played early in your career. So the decision to go started paying off early. You played as a freshman, I think.
Yeah, so I redshirted my freshman year.
Okay.
So the next year, redshirt freshman year, I played in some games. My first game was against Memphis.
I remember it.
4 touchdowns and
in the second half, I think.
Yeah, and he got freshman SEC Player of the Week. So I'm like, man, this thing is really easy.
Here we go.
And then the next week we play Cam Newton and Auburn.
Right.
And that was kind of like welcome to SEC. Yeah. And it got a little tougher. But I mean, I've had a great time. It was a great time at Mississippi State, and people ask like, why did you go to Mississippi State? You would have been better in a different offense. And looking back on it, that's probably would be the case. I was not the option quarterback that Coach Mullen was accustomed to, and I was a stay in the pocket and then deliver a ball down the field type of guy. Mm-hmm. So looking back on it, I wouldn't have changed anything because I met my wife there at State. She was a cheerleader, and we got a beautiful little girl who's 4, so I wouldn't have changed anything.
Yeah, it's worked out.
Yes.
So, and this is, kind of being in those shoes a few years before you were an athlete on campus in Starkville, close to home. If you like to hunt fish, if that's sort of your world and what you like to do, that's a great place to be. And there are plenty of opportunities. So, for you being someone who obsessed with hunting, obsessed with fishing, and you're a football player, how'd you make time for that as an athlete in college?
It was hard. It was hard. And to be honest with you, I probably should have spent more time in football and in school and stuff like that. But, man, just fishing and hunting has always been my passion. And I told my mom growing up when I was probably 5 or 6 that I wanted to make it to the NFL, play for 2 or 3 years, and then be a professional fisherman. That was truly what my dream was. And Mississippi State was a great place for me. You find places to go hunting and fishing, and a lot of the other guys, like Cameron Lawrence and people like that, they love to hunt, they love to fish, so we got to do that quite often.
Yeah. And coming up for you as a kid, who got you into the outdoor stuff?
My dad. Yeah. My dad, for sure. We would go fishing, go all day, sun up to sundown. And I joke with people, but I really think it actually made a difference. I was a quarterback, so the throwing motion and kind of throwing a rod and reel is kind of the same motion, using the same muscles, right? So I believe, my dad had always said that kind of prepared me to be able to throw a football. So we would go all the time.
Oktibbeha County Lake, you go there some while in college?
I never fished there.
Really?
To be honest with you, I've never gone there.
As far as what about the refuge? As far as hunting, fishing?
Yeah, we would go out there, spend a lot of time. For some reason, the baseball guys, right, at Mississippi State, they were always the hunters of the bunch. So duck hunt and things like that, turkey hunt, I would go with them.
Yeah. So you want to go duck hunt and get up with the baseball guys?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Well, again, years before you played, I played there, and in the old Shira football complex before they built the new stuff. You'd walk in, and in the lower level was, indoor facility, weight room, but on the upper walkway was the giant weight scale that all the players had to step on and get weighed, their physicals and things. And that's where we'd weigh our fish.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'd pull the boat up to the front. We keep the fish alive in the live well, sometimes all the way from Oktibbeha County Lake. Put them in a 5-gallon bucket, weigh the bucket, and then put the fish in the bucket and weigh.
Right.
Back in the live well, take them back to the lake and release. And whether we were supposed to or not, I will admit we released some in Chadwick Lake right behind, right by the softball field, just because it was close.
Right.
You ever find any places close to campus, private places to fish, hunt?
There was one place that was right down the way, and actually, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but Justin Atkins.
Yeah.
He's a professional fisherman, and he was on the Mississippi State fishing team, which I had no idea that there was even a fishing team. And it was probably a good idea that I didn't know, because I probably would have been doing that.
A little distracted.
Right, but he found a place that wasn't far. And I didn't know Justin. I just saw pictures and different things like that on Facebook or whatever. And there was this old little community, right? It was like a trailer park, and it had a lake, and they had some giants in there. So we would slip off and go. Whether we were supposed to or not, we would go.
You would go.
Yeah.
You mentioned guys on the team like Cam Lawrence, who he had some time in the NFL. Cowboys, was on their 53 and played a lot of special teams. Other teammates, people that you'd spend time with, and whether it's hunting trips, fishing trips together, that was just kind of the thing that y'all did in the off season?
Oh yeah, we would go. Dylan Day, my center, he's not really known for hunting or fishing or anything like that, but Ben Beckwith, we all would get together and go out to Ben's place, which is on the Big Black River, out towards Yazoo. And I've been with Ben. I still talk to him about it all the time. I probably missed the biggest deer I ever had a chance to shoot at with Ben. And I shot him like 3 times. He didn't move. So Ben is responsible for a lot of guys killing their first deer.
Okay.
He really is. So
how about that? I'm learning a lot about those old Mississippi State days that I didn't know.
Yeah.
So Ben was the guy who would take you and put you on a deer.
Oh yeah, 100%. Especially when we got, a little bit older, around our junior year and stuff like that, and you're kind of figuring everybody out, and you're more comfortable going places because you know that you put in time and work for ours football wise. And then when it's time to play, work hard, play hard. It's kind of what we did. Yeah. So
now, and in those years, you were a year or two ahead of Dak, but you were a teammate with Dak at Mississippi State. And I've always known, Dak, he was a fisherman. He loved it. And now, whether or not he went hunting, I don't know. But I know that Dak enjoys fishing. Did y'all ever go together? Y'all ever?
Yeah, we went. This was probably when I was done playing.
Okay.
So it was probably the next year.
And he was still in school.
He still was in school. Another guy that was on the defense line, Torrey Dale.
Yeah.
From Louisiana. He big hunter, loved to duck hunt and fish. And we actually, Dak and Torrey, we went out to the same place you and I fished.
Okay.
Around Aberdeen.
Yeah.
And it was great. I got to show them kind of how it was done out there, so they enjoyed it. It was fun.
Well, I sure enjoyed going out there with you, and we're going to do that again soon too. Yeah. Got the pictures and the video, by the way, to prove it.
That's right.
Not only does Tyler know where there's some big fish, he knows how to catch them. You spent a good hour and a half throwing that topwater frog, and it was at a time of year when it's a little bit harder. They're a little less aggressive. Water's still a little bit cold, but you stayed at it and finally got that strike and caught that big on a topwater frog. I was impressed with your determination that day.
Oh yeah, I was determined to catch one on the frog.
Topwater fishing. If you say you're an adamant bass fisherman now, and we'll get into that. When I say adamant, I mean fishing tournaments, a lot of miles. You've won tournaments, really into it. You got a chance to, turn this into a career. For those that are listening that might not realize that, and we'll get into that. So from a bass fishing standpoint, your favorite techniques, if you were to rank them 1, 2, 3, this is how, if you could choose to go catch them, this is how you want to do it. What's your top 3 ways to catch them?
Top 3 ways. First would be a spinnerbait.
Really? Spinnerbait's one?
Yes, that's my go-to. I'm probably giving away secrets, but that's fine. But that's my go-to. Okay. I've won a lot of money on a spinnerbait. I'm confident with it. It was a deal when I was a kid. You could go buy them and you could literally throw it all day. You didn't have to worry about retying anything or putting another worm or whatever on. And I really got proficient with it. And one reason was watching Hank Parker and those guys.
Sure.
Kevin Van Dam, he loved the spinnerbait.
Right.
And I've always loved our spinnerbait, and it will be on my deck when I'm fishing for sure.
Okay.
The second would probably be some form of topwater. I do like a topwater bite. A lot of people don't realize when you're topwater fishing, the hookup ratio is not that great, right? So it's very hard,
especially weedless things like the frog or whatever.
Right. It's very hard to your line, braid, rod, reel, all that matters when you're topwater fishing.
Right.
And the third one would be just some form of floating worm, whether that's a sticko, a wacky rig, or anything like that is what we would do. Okay.
So first of all, your number one, you said spinnerbait. And with all the recent, over the last 20 years even, the recent technology of baits and lures and rigs and tackle and everything, I would think that, yes, it's tried and true, but most people probably look at an old, 3/4, half ounce, spinnerbait as old-fashioned.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of an old-fashioned way of catching them.
Yep.
But that's your go-to.
It's my go-to. One reason is in the past 10 years, we've had the chatterbait come out.
Right.
So the chatterbait really replaced the spinnerbait. So if you think about it, everybody went away from the spinnerbait and they started throwing a chatterbait. Well, the fish get used to seeing a chatterbait. So sometimes you can take those old lures like a spinnerbait and different things like that, and you can catch them because they don't see it all the time.
So it's like fashion.
Yeah.
You know, the old stuff that was
Yeah.
the jeans and the things that people wore in the 80s kind of come back in style. You know, the big sunglasses, they come back in style.
That's right.
And, you know, there's another thing you mentioned. I remember years ago when I, you know, still had some money and was still into fishing before I, you know, spent it all. There were lots of experts that their advice for young up and coming tournament fishermen and those who took it seriously was, you know, figure out what you like to do and become good at that.
Right.
Instead of thinking you got to be good at every technique and every, you know, rig and every type of bait. For you, like Denny Brower fishing a jig, you know, Kevin Van Dam is. It's like you. It sounds like you have become proficient with that. You trust it. You know how to fish it, so you just fish it.
Yeah, it's a confidence level, right? A lot of people don't understand fishing, especially tournament fishing, is all about confidence. So if I have confidence in that bait, I'm going to take my time. I'm going to reel it a lot slower, or I might have to reel it faster, but I'm in tune with whatever bait that I have confidence in. Now, if I know the guys are catching them on a jig or something, half-ounce jig, I'm not a jig guy, right? So it's hard for me to pick up a jig and go flip all day because I don't have any confidence in it. But it seems like I can take a spinnerbait. Even if I get 5 bites, that's all you need in a tournament. And a lot of times when I do use a spinnerbait, I catch really good fish. So it's just a confidence thing.
Doing what you know how to do.
That's right.
There's a football analogy in there somewhere, you know, like an offense that really doesn't have an identity. They're just trying to do what everybody else does.
That's right.
They usually are not a very good offense.
That's right.
But find out what you can do well and just do it. Roll with that. That's a really good, you know, the topwater deal. Okay. You mentioned, so if let's say you have someone listening right now, maybe it's a young person that looks up to Tyler Russell in his football and fishing career. What's topwater advice for better hookups? Because yeah, you're gonna miss some fish, especially throwing that frog, make long casts. So how do you remedy that? What's the advice?
I don't think there's ever a remedy for it. I think it's a lot of luck involved, but something that will make you better. And I always do, like, so when I throw out there with a frog and I'm twitching my frog and I stop, right? And a bass comes and gets it. Before I set the hook, I go 1001, 1002, then I set the hook. Right, because a lot of times when you initially see the blow up,
see the strike, yeah,
they hadn't got the bait yet, right? So I had to slow down because I was missing a lot of fish. So if you slow down, you let that fish actually inhale that bait, your hookup ratio is a lot better.
Which is hard to do.
Oh, yeah.
Let's be real, because if you see that blow up.
Yeah, you want to. It's really hard. A lot of times, if I'm frog fishing, I know I'm going to hear it, right, when the bass strikes. A lot of times I won't even look at my frog.
So don't watch it.
Don't watch it.
That's hard to do too.
It's hard to do. It is very hard to do. Yeah. But if I see a target out there and I want to place that frog there and I say, you know what, I'm going to place it here. I should get a bite, right? I throw it out there. I'm going to twitch it. But it's kind of like being a quarterback and using peripherals, right?
Right.
I'm not looking at the bait, so to speak, but I am.
You're holding the safety in the middle of your eyes, but you don't want to look too soon.
That's right.
Then you lead him to where you're throwing it.
Yeah. And there's a lot to say about, you know, when you get a frog out of the pack, I like to bend the hooks up just a little bit.
Okay.
So where when I'm rubbing the back of that frog, I can feel the hook.
Okay.
Right. Now, it's not going to be as weedless, right? But if you're fishing open water or not a whole lot of vegetation and stuff like that,
yeah,
you're going to have a much better hookup ratio.
And on a topwater frog, you need to throw braided line if you can.
Yeah. I 100% throw braid. I probably throw 65-pound braid when I'm frog fishing.
And so that's going to help with, once you get a strike and you're hooked up, is to get them out of those lily pads and get them out of that grass. But there's also an element of there's no give in the line when you set the hook after that long cast.
Yeah, so there's no stretch in braid. There's a lot less stretch in braid than, say, mono or fluorocarbon.
Yeah.
So if there's no stretch, when you set the hook on that fish, he's going to feel it, right? You're going to get a good hook in him.
Okay.
And I didn't know that growing up, so I was throwing it with
monofilament.
I never forget this story. I went with my high school coach. It was Larry Weems.
Yeah.
His brother is Billy Weems. He loved to fish. And so I went out there with him in Clark County at a local lake that he knew, private lake, and it was covered in lily pads. And he told me, hey, probably going to be a frog deal.
Okay.
Well, I had no idea about braid, right? No idea. And they were just loading the boat, and I was just missing all these fish.
And you were missing them, and they're catching them.
Yep. And I was using, just big game, right? It was cheap. You could buy it. Still is cheap today. And you could buy it, and I was missing a lot of fish because I wasn't using braid. I didn't make that mistake again.
Learn that quickly.
Yep.
How about that? A coach can teach you a lot of things, not just how to complete a pass, but maybe how to get more hookups on topwater frogs.
That's right.
That's really neat. All right. So did you have a bass boat in college?
I didn't.
Didn't?
So really, like I said, my dad had a boat all the way when I was growing up, and we really didn't dabble into the tournament fishing at all. We just would go to his favorite lake is Kemper County Lake, and we'd go up there, stay all day long, 2 days a week almost, after school or whatever. Mm-hmm. And we would go fish, and that's what we would do. So I really didn't get into the tournament fishing. And I mentioned Justin Atkins, so I saw a post, I think it was on Twitter or social media account, something like that. And he had this really cool jersey on, and it was Mississippi State, and it was a fishing jersey. I'm like, man, that's pretty cool. I had no idea, like I said before, they had a fishing team. So I thought I was reaching out to a guy that had was on the fishing team, but it was actually a sponsor of the fishing team.
Okay.
And it was a particular rod that I started using and things like that. But that's who I was with and actually introduced me to Pickwick. So I didn't know anything about Pickwick or it being that close until I started going up there with those guys.
And where were you living at the time?
I was in Starkville.
You were in Starkville. Mm-hmm. And so from Starkville to Pickwick, you're 2 hours. 2 hour drive.
This was during spring break one year.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so you go up there, smallmouth, largemouth.
I was blown away. I didn't even know that smallmouth bass were that close relative, to where I was at location-wise. I thought it was this foreign thing that you had to go off to like St. Lawrence River,
Michigan,
to catch them. So that really introduced me to actual tournament fishing, what it was about, different techniques, and just like I thought I knew, but I didn't. You think you're so good at fishing and going and fishing in ponds and being able to catch fish and different things like that, but then you go fish a tournament. Mm-hmm. That's actually the first place I fished a tournament was Pickwick with those guys.
Really?
Yeah. And we actually came in second, believe it or not.
So the first tournament you fished in was not just anywhere, it's at Pickwick, and you finished second in it.
Yeah.
Well, no wonder you got hooked.
Yeah. I couldn't.
It's kind of like football. Your first game as a freshman.
That's right.
First game you ever played in, you threw 4 touchdown passes. You're thinking, it's pretty easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something to say about that because you think and then you get around the guys that are really, really good, that's their home lake. They've done it forever. They grew up there. Right, they know all the secret spots. They know everything. They know what technique to use, what time of year. And then that's when I really started learning and really putting together a program of, okay, it's kind of like in football, when we start a game, a lot of people don't understand the first 10 game or the first 10 plays are scripted.
Right.
It doesn't matter what happens. We're going to stay on that script for 10 plays. Mm-hmm. And then by 10 plays, you should be in the flow of things, and then you kind of start doing other things.
Yeah.
So tournament fishing is the same way. You have, in the back of your mind, you might have 4 or 5 starts that you want to start at, and a lot of it is boat number, and boat number determines which, the order in which you're going to go out as far as the line in a tournament when you get to take off, right? So, if I got a low number boat number, I want to go to my best spot first because it might be a morning bite. But there's some times where I will purposely not register until like the last person because I get a later draw, right? So instead of being in at 2:30, I might have to be back in checking at 3:30.
So you fished a little later.
Yeah, because I have a better afternoon bite, and you don't know that unless you fish practice.
And some people listening, Tyler, might think, well, 2:30 versus 3 o'clock, what's the difference? But that 30 minutes can make all the difference if that's when it turns on or if that's when water starts moving.
That's right. Pickwick, it's all about the current.
Yeah.
It's current based, and the TVA, they determine when they're going to turn the current on, when they're going to turn it off, and they don't care anything about fishing.
Yeah.
Right? It's just what's on their schedule, that's what's going to happen. So a lot of times when the current gets going at Pickwick, that's when you can catch them. You can see fish offshore because Pickwick is mainly offshore fishing.
Yeah.
Using your electronics, being able to find the fish offshore. I love that. That's probably one of the ways, that's top ways I like to catch them, is finding them offshore and be able to take a big crankbait or something and coming through the school of them. Sometimes you can see them down there and they won't bite. They won't bite because there's no current. Time that current turns on, they just go crazy.
They turn off.
Yeah. So.
And which is fascinating. Mm-hmm. So that's just one of the many, many factors, things that go into like, the mental computer, try to figure out fish during a bass tournament.
Yeah.
So the first one you ever fished in with your buddies, you finished second.
Mm-hmm.
What about solo? Like it's your plan, it's your boat, your spot, you're on the trolling motor. When was your first experience with that?
It probably was, I'm going to say 2015, 14, somewhere in there.
Okay, so you're about 4 or 5 years out of school.
Right. So I think a lot of people don't understand this, but a lot of people, they want to fish as a team, right? 2 people fishing.
Yeah.
You got team trails, right? So a lot of times what I would do is, and it would cost me more money because you're not splitting it, the entry fee with somebody. But a lot of times I would fish those by myself because I would be the one making the decisions. If I called a limit, it would be because I made the right decision, because you don't understand, even when you're fishing with a buddy, he could say something and that distracts you from the game plan that you ultimately had in your mind, right?
Yeah.
So if you're serious about tournament fishing and want to move up, and fish professionally or whatever the case may be, Joe Thomas, Joe, he's a good buddy of mine, fished professionally a long time, avid hunter, all this. He told me, he was like, look, if you want to fish, you want to work your way up, even in team tournaments, fish them by yourself because you're going to make all the decisions. So if you do good, it's because of you. If you do bad, it's also because of you. So I really started doing that, and I really started gaining confidence. And it didn't matter to me to go out there and fish what would be a team tournament trail, fish it by myself. And I won a really big tournament on Ross Barnett. It was a team tournament trail. I fished it by myself, and I won. And that gave me all the confidence in the world.
Yeah.
Because for the longest time, I'll admit this, I was so scared to fish a tournament by myself.
Yeah.
Even like being in the boat line going out scared me. It's kind of like, going out there, running out the tunnel.
Yeah.
You're jittery, you're shaking, and you don't know what's going to happen. Then you get the first pass completed or you take the first hit, you're ready. But I never got ready because I was always scared to put myself out there, right? Because you always want to do good.
Sure.
One thing about fishing, everybody can see how you do. If you have a bad day, people are going to see.
You can't hide it.
Can't hide it. And that's one thing that kind of, I think, took me away from tournament fishing early on was, man, if I get out here and I do bad, people are going to be able to say, out of 200 people, Tyler was 200, Yeah. And I think that's something to say about that too. It's all about confidence, but you have to be confident within yourself. And you're not fishing against 199 other people. You're fishing against the fish, and you're fishing against yourself and your mind, because your mind will ultimately take you out of things.
Right.
It'll tell you, hey, that guy over there is catching fish. You should have got there first. He's on your hole. Or he just caught a fish. He threw it back. So that means he's got a limit. You don't have anything. What are you going to do? And then your mind starts, playing tricks and speeding up the process on what should I do? And you get freaked out a little bit.
Well, and the perfect term there, you get sped up.
Yeah.
And Tyler, there are so many things that can be a football analogy, like playing quarterback. That's one of the things you're always getting coached out of, is getting sped up. Young quarterback, things starts moving fast and your attention goes all over the place. You're trying to soak it all in. and they say he's getting sped up. You know, and sometimes you have to get benched to slow back down.
Right.
And
100%.
You know, fishing the same way. You're right. It's you can get sped up. And you know what? Great advice from Joe Thomas for you. So there's Joe, a guy who anything regarding professional fishing, from tournament to TV to anything else in competition, he knows it and has been there. And he says, if you want to do this, eventually you're going to have to be able to do it on your own. You might as well start learning now.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. And it, just for him saying that and me started jumping in tournaments by myself, gave me all the confidence. Just like, I think the last really big tournament I fished in was the tournament that was on Pittwick. It was a big fish tournament this past summer.
Okay.
And it was a team tournament. I fished it by myself. Well, it's a 3-day tournament, and I didn't figure the fish out till like the last 4 hours on the third day. And I was able to cash, you know, a couple checks out of that. So you feel accomplished because there was probably 500-600 entries, people in a boats fishing, you know, that tournament. So to be able to figure it out, you feel good. Now I do enjoy fishing with my buddies, right? Yeah. And a lot of times these Thursday night tournaments are some of the funnest that you can fish. I will fish with a buddy, right? Because you don't have a whole lot of time. You kind of got to decide, okay, this is what we're going to do, and that's what we're going to do, and how we finish. But that's another thing I will say too. Those Thursday night tournaments, especially around Ross Burnett, stuff like that, those are some of the funnest. Yeah. And there's some really, really good sticks in there that can catch them.
They can catch them.
Yeah. And that's what they live for, those Thursday night tournaments.
Yeah. And that's really what it's all about, is fun. You know, so for you, is that kind of the goal for you, is to continue with it and turn it into a career, you think?
Well, you know,
because I know you're doing some coaching. Yeah. You just started that.
Early on, I wanted to, you know, be a professional fisherman, right? But I thought you actually had to be a professional fisherman to like get the sponsors and to, you know, do all these different things.
And on a trail.
Right. And be honest, you don't. Okay. Right. There's a couple buddies of mine who are big time fishermen that if they made it to the Elite Series, which is one of the top organizations as far as professional fishermen there is, they wouldn't go. And I couldn't understand that. I don't understand it. But when you really look at the money side of things, because it's a business, and you really break it down, a lot of these people will tell you that at Fish for a Long Time, you actually can make more money fishing a good weekend trail, right?
Closer to home in a lot of cases.
Think about expenses, gas, all this stuff. You're fishing a home lake where a lot of times I don't even go practice because I kind of know what the fish are going to do in that time of year. So practice days, being away from home, you got a family, different things like that. I had to really look at that and say, you know what, right now, I can't go chase that. Right. But these weekend tournaments, I can do that. Yeah. Right. I can go cast some good checks in these weekend tournaments. So that's kind of what I'm focused on now. And then you talk about social media and starting the social media and different things like that. I really see that you can have an impact on a social media stage as far as, you know, video and putting content up that you can get the same result. There's different sponsors and different things like that.
Because there are millions of people, okay, like me. You share a video of catching a fish, I'll watch it. Every single time I'll watch it. And you're finding that out, aren't you?
Oh yeah. Because you'll be surprised at the number of people that will watch fishing, or they'll watch it and they don't know what kind of technique or how it's done. So I really like, and this goes back to, you know, helping coaching football and stuff like that. I like to be able to take somebody that doesn't know what I know and try to relay that information to them to where they can do it, right? One of my best buddies, Frederick Walker, he was a GA at Mississippi State when I was there. He's actually the quarterback coach with the Raiders now. And I took him to catch his first fish at that same place me and you went. And it was so frustrating because it's like, it's kind of like, and you'll relate to this, it's kind of like teaching a young kid how to do a 3-step drop. It's muscle memory to you. Yeah, I mean, you just can do it. But having somebody who's never done it before, it's like you got to go back through all the small little details, and it really humbles you. It really does. Sure. Because you know that it's something that you were able to learn, and if you can relay that information to somebody who's never done it, and then they can go out there and be successful, then that's what it's all about. And then that's what I like to do.
Tyler, rumor has it that you may be catching the crappie bug also.
Yeah.
True?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You know, a lot of people associate crappie fishing with, you know, being retired, a retired guy going out there and sitting on a boat. But
they say you're not old enough for crappie fishing.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. My dad tell me, you're not old enough to crappie fish. He's like, I don't even crappie fish, you know.
Yeah.
But they taste really good, right?
Absolutely.
Right. You can catch a bunch of them, right? The creel limit and stuff like that is really good at a lot of our state lakes and different things.
And yeah, you live in Mississippi, which is like crappie capital of the world.
Right. And you take that for granted. Right.
Yeah.
We you know, there's several different lakes in Mississippi that are the top in the country, right?
Yeah.
So I got the bug, and we'll understand this, but I got the bug to crappie fish on my electronics using live scope, right? It's something
Game changer.
You're seeing all these crappie fishing. That's really when the live scope took off. Is crappie fishing, and a lot of these guys can put a really just 1/16 ounce jig in front of a crappie that's down there 15 something feet. He can tell you what kind of mood that crappie's in. Well, doing that with a bass will be a lot easier, right? So it's like it's forcing me to get better at my electronics using live scope. So when I do step into a bass fishing tournament, I'm confident. If I see bass down there, I feel like I can make them bite.
Yeah.
So it's all about electronics, but it's fun. It is fun when you. And the way I'm doing it, the way I'm fishing is I'm actually hunting down single crappie, right? Using my electronics and then throwing to them and catching them. A lot of your bigger crappie, it seems like for me anyways, seems like the bigger crappie are off away from the smaller crappie. And they're just kind of solo. If you got a brush pile down there, they might not be in the brush pile. They might be 40 feet off the brush pile, but that's still a crappie down there. And I like try to catch those.
Yeah. And you mentioned social media for those listening. If they want to go see some of the fish you catch, you share a lot of content. Where do they find you?
Well, I recently just started a YouTube channel. I'm trying to get my content level up, and it's hard to do. But my social media platform, as far as YouTube, my name is Gridiron Grit.
Okay.
Outdoors. It's the name of my channel.
Okay.
So
yeah, it's almost as good as y'all a name anyway.
Yeah,
you can follow David's footsteps. You'll be doing good.
He's awesome. He's got it figured out. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It is not easy. Well, it's just like anything, Tyler. People, when you were playing quarterback, okay, you look up the numbers, the thousands of yards and all the touchdowns, and at times you made it look easy. People who are good at something, they make it look easy. They make it look simple.
Yeah, and
it almost never is.
Nope.
And, you know, the fishermen, the pros, they make it look easy. It's not. Getting lots of views on YouTube, David Ellis makes it look easy. It's not, is it?
It is not. It's so much more than just putting a video up and saying, hey.
Yeah.
It's from your thumbnail on, you know, what the video is actually about to what you're doing in the video.
Well, and the consistency of having it out there constantly. Too.
Oh, it's, you know, the more you put it out there, more consistent, you know, you get in that algorithm, and, you know, YouTube will push it in front of the following that you want, right? And it's been tough. You know, you work a full-time job and doing all this other stuff. It's hard to really stay really consistent with it. But that's something that I'm trying to get better at, is being consistent with it. But I don't want to just put out a video and say, hey, I just went fishing today. I want it to relate to somebody that, you know, some of the comments that I've gotten from my YouTube videos that I put out is, hey, what size line? Hey, what size jig head? You know, I wasn't going to share this, but I really got the bug bad to where I'm actually tying my own jigs.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. So
that's another one. You're not supposed to do that until you're older, but you're making your own stuff now.
I've always been not artistic, but I like to paint and different things, whether that's on a gun stock or, you know, airbrush, different bass baits, different things like that. And tying jigs goes hand in hand. And it's so much fun when you have a jig head and you tie it up together, right? And you go out there and you catch fish on it. That's fun to me.
Yeah.
So.
You know, and sometimes the thumbnails, they have to be kind of clickbaity. You could do one that says, I taught Dak how to fish. Now, whether it's true or not, you'll draw in some attention.
Oh, yeah.
And it may be true. Yeah. Maybe you did teach him how to catch fish. As far as anybody knows.
How to catch one on a spinnerbait.
On a spinnerbait. Yeah. That's great. Well, Tyler, it's good to catch up with you, man. And I'm so happy for you that post-football career, you got another career that may be just as enjoyable, if not more so, than throwing that pigskin around. That's throwing that spinnerbait and catching lunkers. And we're going to keep following you.
I appreciate it.
Yep, appreciate a little time. That's Tyler Russell, the man who taught Dak how to catch a bass on a spinnerbait. Thanks for listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast, and we'll see you outdoors.